Obviously I'm biased, but with my whole heart I can honestly say after 5 months of owning this watch, this is my favorite watch in my collection right now. This is my SPB381J1. I bought this watch back in April of 2024 while vacationing in Waikiki. Before we get to the watch, I want to give a shout out to Andrew and the whole Gem Castle team. Gem Castle is a Japanese watch retailer, and they happen to have a boutique in Waikiki near the Royal Hawaiian Center. The whole experience was top level, and Andrew was kind enough to let me handle and try on a Patek 5711. Wearing $100K on your wrist is crazy. Let's go over the dimensions. 42mm case, lug to lug is 48.6, thickness according to Seiko is 12.9, but my calipers read 13.3, and the lug width is 20mm. If you're into Seiko's heritage, have an insatiable level of attention to detail, love refined aesthetics and high levels of finishing, automatic watches with complications, and don't mind spending over $1,000 on a watch, this might be the one. This watch features 200 meters of water resistance and is ISO compliant with a screw down crown and screw down case back. The addition of LumiBrite, magnetic resistance of 4,800 ampere per meter, a sapphire crystal with inner AR, hardening treatment of the steel, drilled lugs, and ceramic bezel pushes this watch into ultimate tool watch territory. The bezel action is silky smooth and competes for second place alongside the Black Bay in my collection. As far as bezel action goes in my collection, I still have to give it to the Sternglass Marus, man. That thing is solid. My favorite feature of this watch is the finishing. Hands down, this is one of the most beautiful watches I've ever handled, especially at the price point I was offered. The AD offered this to me for $1,050 out the door. That's after tax and everything. It was honestly a deal too good to pass up. When I was at the boutique, it was between this watch and the SPB143, which is the 62 Mas reissue or reinterpretation. Okay, so real quick. In the 1960s, Seiko had two big dive watch releases. I think they were actually the first dive watches to be released. It was the 62 Mas and then the Marine Master. The Marine Master is what this SPB381 is designed after, kind of follows that same ethos and design language. This watch's case design is referred to by enthusiasts as the MM200 or the Marine Master Reduced. The Big Brother modern Marine Master is 300 meter water resistance and has a slightly larger case. The newer SLA MM300 models are closer homages to the original Marine Masters and the newer SBDX models. And from what I can gather from the internet, the SLAs are done better than these SPBs, but they're also, I think, 2 times the price. The finishing on this watch is actually insane. The mix of polished and brushed surfaces on the case sides give this watch crazy levels of dimension when it's on the wrist. That, mixed with the ceramic bezel and sunburst dial, makes this watch one of the most beautiful watches to look at in the light. The polishing almost rivals the Zaratsu on my Grand Seiko. It really just pops, man. And when I saw it for the first time in the flesh, it was quite mesmerizing. The ceramic bezel, it really does make a difference. The SPB381J1 has what I like to call perceivable dimension. Yes, 42mm is a large case, but because of the dial to bezel ratio and because of the tapered edges that go along the case sides, this watch wears a little smaller, a little thinner than its proposed case dimensions. Seiko always does well with their lug-to-lug dimensions, and on my 6.5-inch wrist, I can confidently say this is the most comfortable dive watch I own in the over 40mm range. And I say this with no disrespect to my Tudor, Sternglass, and Raven. I still love y'all with my whole heart. The dial is clean. Even with all the busy text, I don't mind the 4:30 date, and I'd rather a watch have a date somewhere than no date at all. I think it's well balanced. One design cue that I like to point out that helps with legibility is how the crystal is set up. The crystal has a bevel along the edge to give it a box effect, but does it in a way that doesn't obstruct the view of the 24-hour Arabic markers along the rihat for the GMT hand. The sword-shaped hands are perfect. I love the shovel seconds with the red accent, and the icing on the cake is the polished gold GMT hand, which is easy to differentiate from the rest of the handset. The printing of the text is razor sharp and lays out perfect this watch's professional specification. This next section, I wouldn't really call negatives. It's more of like a I wish they woulda. I don't really view these things as negatives, but let me break it down. This watch has already been reviewed a gazillion times, and the bracelet gets the harshest critique. Yes, the diver's extension is stamped and looks janky as all hell, but the way it's integrated into the bracelet isn't that bad, and I always forget about it, and it stays out of the way. Yes, the clasp and keeper is bulky, but yo, anybody that collects Seiko knows that when it comes to the bracelet department, Seiko's always going to fall short just a little bit. So if there's any critique, I think it should be to Seiko as a whole to improve their bracelets. I don't know if they're listening. Yeah. But for me personally, I honestly don't mind the bracelet that much on this watch. It's not bad. One added benefit with this watch is the inclusion of the fat spring bars, which helps with bracelet attachment and security. And this watch features drilled lugs for easy strap swaps anyways. The next thing is, if you look close enough, the dial and the bezel are kind of different shades of green depending on how the light hits it. I didn't really notice this until I started shooting B-roll for this video, so that's one thing to keep in mind. I don't really mind it, and it doesn't bother me, but something to point out. Next is the movement. This watch comes with a 6R54. It beats at 3 Hz. I don't have a time grapher, so I can't really measure the accuracy all that much. I do set my watches to an atomic clock. It's not bad. I mean, it's pretty standard Seiko. As far as accuracy is concerned, it doesn't bother me too much. So I will say, with the rise of micro brands and access to better movements, some movements having higher hertz rates, better sweeping seconds, aesthetics, and all of that. That's something that's a big value draw for a lot of micro brands. But something this watch has is a 3-day power reserve with a GMT hand. I now own 3 watches that have 3-day power reserves, and it's one of the most convenient things to have, especially if it's an automatic or a mechanical watch. And I'm kind of getting to this point where if I needed to choose between power reserve and hertz rate, I think I'd rather choose power reserve because of the convenience of it. It's just nice being able to put your watch down and then 2 days later pick it up and it's still tracking the time. That's something to keep in mind. Honestly, 6R54, the movement of this watch doesn't bother me that much. I don't think it's like a deal breaker. I'm a diver fanatic. Honestly, more than I'm a Seiko fanatic. I would say it's pretty neck and neck. Right now I own 6 dive watches, all with screw down crowns. And one thing I love about these MM200 GMTs is that they're dive watches first before they're GMT watches. The GMT presence is subtle, and I think that's perfect for my lifestyle because, I mean, I travel a fair amount, but I'm not like a jet setter. I'm definitely riding that silver to gold Delta status every year. I mean, I think one day if I'm like hitting multiple cities across multiple time zones every week, then I could justify buying a traveler's GMT watch. But for right now, this collar / office style is more than suffice. I love this watch because it's a dive watch first, an ISO certified one at that. But it has the added benefit of a 24-hour hand for those moments when it really counts.